This is part 2 of our BrickBreaker project. So in this video, we will try and add a ball to our window, and maybe we'll try in this video to see if we can get it bouncing around the screen. But basically, we just want to be able to see the project running and to see the ball on the screen. So we are going to do things a little bit differently in this project. Instead of making an applet where we might get some glitchiness, some flashing, the animation might not be great, we're going to use JFrames for this one. So some of you may have used those before. Most of you, this will probably be new. So first thing I'm going to do is make a new class called main. It's just regular class. And I'm going to open that up and let's get rid of all the code. And we are going to import javax.swing.jframe. And I'm just going to make a regular class. Name of the class, we're calling it main. And it will also have a main method inside. So this is going to end up being the class that we're going to run over and over again. This is like our tester, our main class. So inside here, we're going to create a JFrame object called frame. So that's the data type. There's actually a class called JFrame, part of this package up here. So this is a new JFrame, and we're just going to use the default constructor. And now there are some methods that I can use on a JFrame object. One of them is setting the bounds. Now, the one that I've made is just 500 by 500. It's kind of a small window. You can feel free to make it larger if you'd like. Just make sure you change the coordinates, of course, of when the ball collides with the walls. So instead of 500 by 500, I found that the ball, it didn't look like it was hitting the right-hand side or the bottom of the screen very well. So I had to extend this to 507 and 535. I haven't quite figured out why yet, but maybe in doing this a second time, it might clue in somewhere. So again, my window is actually going to be 500 by 500, but I have to set the bounds to this in order for the ball to kind of bounce properly without going off the screen. Okay, next you can set a title for your frame. And this is going to just say BrickBreaker by Mr. Morlag. Okay, or put whatever you want. I am going to set resizable to false. So once the program is run, I can move the frame around, but I won't be able to resize it, which is good because that'll look weird. And then there is this other method called set default close operation. And basically, when you hit the little X on your frame, I just want this to exit on close. Okay, and then just a couple more lines here. We're going to create a BrickBreaker game object called game. And this is assigned a new BrickBreaker game. So we're creating an object. Now, we have to create this class. So after we create this one, we're going to create a BrickBreaker game object. And this is interesting. If you create a BrickBreaker game object, that means you can create several instances of a BrickBreaker game. So you could have multiple games happening at the same time. So you could have four games inside one frame if you really wanted to. That would be interesting. We're not going to do that. We're just going to have one object, and we're going to place it into our frame like this, frame.add game. So I'm going to take this object and add it to our frame. And then last, I'm going to say frame.set visible to true. Okay, so if you try to compile, it should all work except for this line right here. It's saying, I don't know what BrickBreaker game is. So we're going to start working on that. That's just a regular class. and we'll highlight everything, get rid of it. Okay, and now this is where we're going to create public class BrickBreaker. Okay, so this is going to be a pretty big class, kind of like the guts of the program. So this is kind of the controller where it's going to have all the objects interact, the ball with the paddle and with the bricks. So there's going to be a lot of code in here eventually. So we'll do it piece by piece, and I'll show you how to do a few things here and there, and then let you run with it. So this class is going to extend something called a JPanel, and we're going to implement the interfaces key listener and action listener. Listener. No, listener. Yes. Okay. So that's a big header there. So there's some inheritance going on, and then also we're implementing these two interfaces. Now for this to work, we need some import statements. So we have to import java.awt.star, javax.swing.star, and java.awt.event.star. And that's so that we can get the key listener and action listener working. Key listener, you may already know what that is. That will give us the capability to press keys on the keyboard and then have that little paddle move around. You could do other things too. I mean, you could hit another key, maybe a special key like the Q letter, and that makes the paddle get larger. Action listener is interesting. That allows us to set up a timer. And so rather than loops, we're going to use a timer that runs every few milliseconds, and it will draw the ball at a new location. So so that's what we're going to do with action listener. Okay, so inside here, the instance variables are going to be, well, we're going to start slow. We're just going to make a ball and a timer. Okay. So we're going to add more here later. Of course, eventually we're going to add a paddle object and a brick object and perhaps an array of bricks or a 2D array of bricks. So that's all coming down the line. But we'll just start slow. We'll just have a ball and a timer object. So yes, this actually comes with the JDK. We don't have to make that object. Of course, we made ball. So ball is something that we had to make, and we did that in the last video. And then this actually is a predefined Java class. Okay, so I'm going to make a constructor. Should probably add a few comments here. Instance vars and a constructor. Okay, so in here, I'm not going to have any parameters. I'm just going to have a default constructor, and that will satisfy my main class. So over here, I'm going to have no parameters. So it's just going to set to these default values that I choose in here. So first thing is the ball. And so here we go. We're going to create our first instance of a ball object. So if you remember your ball class, if I open it up, we need to have a peek at the constructor. So I'll just do a split screen here. So in the ball class, the constructor had these variables in order. So x, y, size, and then dx, dy, and color. Okay, I can just look up here for the order. So over in my BrickBreaker game, I need to specify all of those things. So I'm just going to start the ball at 250, 250. So that's my XY position. So basically in the center of the screen. And the size of my ball, I'm going to make it 20. You can change yours if you'd like. So that's going to be the diameter of the ball. And then I need dx and dy, so the direction that the ball is going to be going. So this is interesting here. I'm just going to start it at 3 and 2. So basically, every time the timer ticks, the ball is going to move 3 pixels across, so horizontally, and then 2 pixels down. And you may be thinking about how this is going to work. So eventually, when the ball hits something, you're gonna change dx and dy to the negative of what it currently is. So we'll get to that shortly. And then the last parameter is the color. So I am gonna make this white. Again, feel free to pick a different color. Okay, so now I'm gonna maximize this again so we can see everything. So that should be correct. All right, and then also inside here, I'm going to add a key listener. So that will allow me to, oh, spelled it wrong again, listener. That will allow me to add key presses and then to write some code for the key presses. And then I'm also going to create a new timer. So I've already created the reference up here. So I'm going to assign that reference to a new timer. And I need to put in 2 things. I need to put in a speed, which I'm just going to put in 10 right now. So basically that represents the number of milliseconds. So every 10 milliseconds, the timer is going to go off, meaning there's a bunch of code I can run every 10 milliseconds. I'll show you a little bit later. And then we're going to have to put the parameter this here as well. And then I'm going to start the timer. So timer.start bracket bracket. Okay, yeah, so a lot of new stuff there. But timers, I considered in this project having you use loops instead, but timers are a little bit easier to control and I think provide a little bit smoother animation as well. Okay, so next I'm going to make a paint method. Okay, and then so this is a very important method that will draw everything that we want in the window. So if you look at my example, you might have remembered there were some borders. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to open up Word for a second. So what I'm going to do is draw, the first thing I'm going to do is draw a yellow square. I mean, it doesn't have to be yellow, it could be any color that you want. I'm going to make it yellow. Yellow. Okay, and then I'm going to insert a black square, kind of like this, with no border at the bottom. Again, this could be any color that you want. I chose to have it black. So that's what my game looks like. And so in that way, so that creates your walls, your 3 walls, and then it's open at the bottom. If you wanted, you could have a wall at the bottom, and the ball just kind of sticks to it if it hits the bottom. But I chose to do it like this. You could do it differently. You could draw 3 rectangles around instead, but I kind of cheated a little bit and just drew 2 squares. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to draw the walls and the background. Something eventually you probably will want to do is, instead of just a black background, you can go grab an image or a photograph or something, and then you can have that as your background, which is kind of looks cool. Same thing with the walls. Instead of just a yellow wall, you could have maybe a brick texture or something else. So I'm going to set the color to yellow and draw a big rectangle with the top left corner at 0, 0, and then it'll go right to 500, 500. Okay, and then we'll make a black one. And I'm going to fill a rectangle from 5, 5 to 490 and 495. Now, it's really important that you remember these numbers. If you decide to make a bigger window, you should write down these numbers of this inner black rectangle. So I'm actually going to go to my rough work here and just make a note that this point right here is 5, 5. Remember that the x values go this way and the y values go this way. And the top left corner is 0, 0. That's your origin. And there's no negative x or y values, so they just go on and on. So this point right down here is going to be 500, 500. Okay, so that's 5, 5, and then I made it 490 pixels wide. So that's going to be 495. Okay, so that's the x value. So I'm going to keep this handy, and I may come back and refer to this. You should maybe have some rough paper and draw your own sketch, especially if you make a different size BrickBreaker game. You're going to want to write down these coordinates so that we know if the ball's colliding against the wall or not. Okay, so next in here, I'm going to say ball dot move, G. So if you remember in our ball class, we made a move method right down here. And the move method simply, well, for now, just adds dx to x and adds dy to y, and then it draws it. So it draws the ball in that position. Okay, so over in my BrickBreaker game, in my paint method, I'm going to say ball.move, and so that will do two things. It'll move the ball, and then it will also draw it. Too many braces, and I feel like I'm missing a brace somewhere. That's okay. I put a semicolon at the end of my header, so that's no, we don't want to do that. So take that away. Okay, so now I get my method coloring back here. Okay, still not done. Since these are interfaces, we must implement all of the methods in these interfaces. So key listener has 3 methods that I have to put in my class, and they are public void key pressed with a key event called E, and then I'm just going to copy this and paste it. So the other 2 that we need are key typed and then key released. Now, we're actually not going to put any code inside key released or key typed. So that's key typed is the moment you press the key in, you can attach code to here. And then key released is when you release the key, you can have a separate piece of code, which is kind of neat. But we're going to put all of our code into key pressed. So basically, when I press the arrow keys, the little paddle is going to go left and right. So that will be coming in a different video. Or you can go ahead and give it a shot and see if you can get it working. So all of these methods will satisfy the interface key listener. Okay, so then for action listener, we just need one method, which is nice. And I'm going to put that, I'll put it right here. So it's called action performed. And we need an action event called E. Okay, and then inside here, I'm going to say timer.start and then repaint. Now, I already did start my timer up here. Let's see, I may not need that. Let's just see what happens here if I compile. I will likely have some errors. Okay. Oh, okay. I see what is the problem here. The constructor is called BrickBreaker game, but I just called the class BrickBreaker. So I'm going to call that BrickBreaker game because if you remember, that's the name in my main. When I was setting up my JFrame, that's what I called it here, BrickBreaker game. Yeah, so I'm going to call the class BrickBreaker game. Okay, so now if I compile, all right, so we seems like it's okay now, no errors. I also added these two lines, set focusable to true and set focus traversal keys enabled to false. For some reason, you need to add these in order to get the keys working and for us to actually be able to click on the frame. Okay, so we might be ready to actually see something here. So if I go to my main method and we compile, okay, and run the main. All right, so we see our frame and I can move this around. I can't resize it, but we can see our yellow walls, the three walls, and the black background and the white ball in the middle. Okay, so right now nothing happens. Like if I hit my my keys, nothing happens. So I'm gonna end the video here because it's kind of a long one, and then in the next video we will try and get a brick drawn up here, and then our paddle going at the bottom, and we'll go from there. In the meantime, be creative. Think of some different colors or different backgrounds. Perhaps adding some images instead of just the plain black background. That would be great. Okay, we'll see you in the next video.